The night shift at the office was quiet, too quiet for Marcus, the janitor nobody noticed. They whispered, mocked his worn uniform and silent ways, never suspecting what hid beneath his sleeve. Then, one careless glance revealed the faded Special Forces tattoo curling up his arm, and everything changed in an instant. Welcome to XQ Incredible Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. Marcus moved silently through the empty hallways of Meridian Towers, a skyscraper that housed some of the city's most powerful companies. The soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the faint scent of polished marble filled the air. By all appearances, Marcus was invisible, just another janitor, dressed in a faded gray uniform that blended into the background of the sterile office environment. His footsteps echoed softly as he pushed his mop bucket along the spotless floors. Marcus's face was calm, expression unreadable, his eyes steady but distant. He had worked the night shift here for nearly 5 years, and the office staff barely noticed him beyond a polite nod or a quick good morning if they crossed paths at dawn. Most employees dismissed Marcus as quiet and unremarkable, an invisible fixture in the building's machinery. He never complained, never drew attention, and never asked for anything. To many, he was just part of the scenery, someone to be overlooked or quietly mocked when the cameras were off. But Marcus didn't mind. He preferred the solitude. The world of bustling corporate meetings, frantic emails, and office politics was not his place. Here, with only the steady rhythm of his cleaning duties and the quiet nighttime hours for company, he found a strange peace. Yet beneath the simple exterior lay a story that no one in the glass towers above could imagine. A past carved out of discipline, courage, and sacrifice. A past that had shaped the man who moved so deliberately through the corridors. A past marked by battles fought far from this polished world. As Marcus finished wiping down the lobby's granite floor, he glanced briefly at the security monitor showing the staff elevators. Soon, the early shift would arrive, and the building would awaken again. For now, the janitor remained a shadow, unnoticed and underestimated. But all that was about to change. The first rays of dawn crept through the tall windows of Meridian Towers, casting long shadows across the glossy floors and sleek desks. As the day shift employees streamed in, the office quickly came to life with chatter, tapping keyboards, and ringing phones. Among the clatter, one topic quietly threaded its way through whispered conversations and sideways glances. Marcus, the janitor. No one said it outright in meetings or in front of supervisors, but behind closed doors and by the water cooler, the staff exchanged their opinions on the quiet man who worked nights and slipped away before most arrived. "He's so dull," whispered Jenna from accounting, rolling her eyes. "Always keeps to himself. Doesn't even smile. I heard he's some kind of ex-military or something," chimed in Tom from sales, smirking. "Probably just milking a pension. Doesn't look like he's done much more than mop floors here." The laughter was low and casual, but biting beneath the surface. To most, Marcus was an easy target, a man who seemed out of place among sharp suits and ambitious professionals. His tattered uniform and quiet demeanor made him an outsider in a world obsessed with status and appearances. Yet, despite the sneers and the snickers, no one dared confront him directly. Marcus moved through the office like a ghost, indifferent to the judgment swirling around him. When someone tried to make small talk, his answers were curt but polite, a wall of calm that discouraged further questions. Sarah, a bright-eyed intern new to the company, noticed this subtle dismissal almost immediately. Watching Marcus move silently past the coffee machine, she sensed something deeper behind those steady eyes, something that didn't belong in the realm of office gossip. That day, while the others laughed, Sarah made a quiet decision. She would learn the truth about the janitor nobody seemed to see. As the office buzzed with its usual energy, Marcus returned to his nightly routine once the last employee filtered out. The silence was a stark contrast to the daytime chaos, a world where he could move unobserved, carrying out his duties with quiet precision. Every corner of Meridian Towers was familiar to him. The gleaming marble staircases, the endless rows of cubicles, the dimly lit conference rooms waiting patiently for their next meetings. Marcus started his rounds in the lobby, wiping down glass doors until they sparkled under the soft overhead lights. His movements were deliberate, each task performed with care that went unnoticed. He mopped floors in long, steady strokes, arranged chairs just so, and restocked paper towels and soaps with a methodical rhythm born from years of discipline. He worked alone, his thoughts often drifting far away from the polished wall surrounding him. In those quiet moments, he allowed himself to remember the sharp snap of commands during training, the adrenaline rush of missions in foreign deserts, the weight of responsibility for his brothers in arms. Yet none of that history was visible to the people who passed him by, unaware of the battles he had fought, both on distant soil and within himself. Every night, Marcus unfolded his life in silence. No one knew the toll it took to wear the uniform of a janitor after years in special forces. The constant effort to blend in, to disappear, to avoid stirring curiosity or pity. It was easier to be overlooked than to explain the scars beneath the skin or the stories locked behind steady eyes. The janitor pushed his mop bucket down a long corridor, glanced at the flickering exit sign, and then paused for a moment. A faint smile brushed his lips, a quiet acknowledgement that the day ahead would bring change. Something had shifted in the air, though Marcus wasn't sure what it was yet. Tonight, he thought, nothing would stay hidden for long. Marcus worked with practiced efficiency, but the building's shadows seemed to hold secrets even he couldn't fully escape. It was during these quiet hours, as he polished desks and emptied trash bins, that fragments of his past would sometimes surface, subtle and unbidden. A faded scar peeked from beneath his sleeve as he rolled it up to scrub a stubborn stain on the carpet. The jagged line was a souvenir from a firefight long ago, one no one in the office would ever guess. His hands, though steady and sure now, bore calluses and faint tremors, remnants of the physical and mental battles he carried silently. Once, while fixing a flickering light in a storage closet, Marcus had paused to examine the wall etched with scuff marks. To anyone else, it was nothing but wear and tear. To him, it resembled the cracked walls of a faraway base under siege, a place where comrades fell and promises were made. On his breaks, Marcus occasionally traced his fingers over the worn edges of a small dog tag tucked inside his uniform pocket. The metal was cold but familiar, a link to a life that felt both distant and urgent. It was a silent reminder of who he once was, and who he might never fully become again. No one noticed these signs. No one asked. The office saw only a quiet janitor, moving through the halls with invisible footsteps. But beneath the surface, Marcus's past was a complex tapestry of valor, loss, and resilience, carefully concealed behind his calm exterior. And soon, someone would see it too. The following week, a fresh face arrived at Meridian Towers, Sarah, a bright and eager to prove herself in the corporate world. From her first day, Sarah noticed Marcus moving quietly through the halls, his presence somehow both unobtrusive and compelling. Unlike many others, she didn't dismiss him as just another janitor. During lunch breaks, Sarah would catch glimpses of Marcus working in the distance, his sleeves rolled up, revealing tattoos she couldn't quite decipher. She watched how he moved with careful precision and a calm she found strangely magnetic in the chaos of the office. One afternoon, as Sarah passed the break room, she noticed Marcus standing alone, cleaning the counter. The faded green walls cast a soft glow, and for a moment, Marcus's guard seemed to drop. His sleeve slipped back slightly, revealing a glimpse of a distinctive tattoo curling around his forearm, a dagger wrapped in olive branches, unmistakable to those who knew military insignia. Curiosity sparked. Sarah wanted to know more, but hesitated. She wondered if it was her place to ask, or if Marcus preferred to remain silent about his past. Still, a quiet determination took root in her. There was a story here, one worth uncovering beyond the mop and bucket. In the days that followed, Sarah made small efforts to speak with Marcus, offering polite greetings, asking about his day, and slowly chipping away at the wall of solitude he had built around himself. Marcus remained reserved, but didn't reject her kindness. The office buzzed with its usual gossip and whispers about the janitor, but Sarah's curiosity was different. She sensed there was more beneath the surface, something powerful, something untold, and she was determined to learn it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening when the unexpected happened, an accidental glimpse that would change everything. Marcus was deep into his nightly routine, carefully scrubbing the baseboards of a conference room when the door creaked open. Sarah had stayed late to finish a project and needed to grab a forgotten folder. As she stepped inside, she nearly collided with Marcus, who instinctively stepped back, rolling up his sleeve to wipe sweat from his brow. In that fleeting motion, Sarah caught a clearer view of the tattoo that had been teasing her curiosity for days. It was unmistakable, the emblem of the Special Forces, an arrowhead piercing a dagger, entwined with an olive branch, inked in fading black and green. The design was weathered but unmistakable, a badge of honor and sacrifice. Sarah's eyes widened, her heart pounding with realization. Here was a man who carried a past few dared to guess, a soldier, a warrior, a hero hidden behind the janitor's uniform. Word traveled fast in the small office community, and by the next morning, whispers filled the halls. "Did you see the tattoo on Marcus's arm?" "No way. He was in the Special Forces? Why would someone like him be janitor here?" Suddenly, the quiet man who had been ignored and ridiculed was the center of attention. Some were in awe, others skeptical, and a few resentful of the newfound respect he received. Marcus, however, remained unmoved. He had no need to explain himself or to defend his past to strangers. But the revelation had set wheels in motion that even Marcus could not control. The world around him had shifted, and with it, the invisible barriers that had kept him hidden for so long began to crack. By the time Marcus clocked in for the night shift, the office atmosphere had already shifted. Whispers and sideways glances followed him like shadows, the revelation of his Special Forces tattoo spreading faster than he anticipated. People who had barely given him a second thought were now whispering behind closed doors and exchanging theories. In the break room, hushed conversations buzzed about the quiet janitor who had served in elite military units. "I had no idea," said one co-worker, shaking her head in disbelief. "Why didn't he ever say anything?" Another speculated, maybe he didn't want the attention. Marcus noticed the change, but stayed composed. He had learned long ago that respect wasn't something freely given. It had to be earned. The sudden spotlight was unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but he understood it was inevitable once his past was no longer a secret. Sarah watched the scene unfold with a mix of concern and hope. She admired Marcus's quiet strength and wanted the office to see him as she did, a man of honor and resilience, not just a janitor. Yet, she also sensed the sting of judgment beneath the newfound admiration, a reminder that respect earned late is often fraught with tension. Some colleagues approached Marcus tentatively, offering smiles or simple nods, while others kept their distance, unsure how to reconcile their previous assumptions with this new reality. The walls Marcus had built around himself were cracking, revealing a side of him few had ever seen. The janitor who had moved through the office unnoticed was now impossible to ignore. The question hanging in the air was no longer who Marcus was, but who he would choose to be. The walls of the conference room faded away as Marcus closed his eyes, memories flooding back in vivid detail. The relentless sun beating down on dusty desert landscapes, the sharp crackle of radio static, and the steady weight of his pack as he moved through hostile territory. He was back in the heart of his Special Forces days, the time that had forged him into the man he was. Marcus had enlisted straight out of high school, driven by a deep sense of duty and a need to belong to something greater. The grueling training tested every limit, physical, mental, and emotional. Long days turned into longer nights, filled with drills, survival exercises, and tactical warfare simulations designed to break down recruits only to build them back stronger. He remembered the camaraderie, the bonds formed in shared hardship and danger. His unit had become family, a brotherhood forged under fire. Together, they had undertaken missions few would understand, rescuing hostages, gathering intelligence, and striking at threats before they could reach American soil. But with every victory came loss. Marcus carried the weight of fallen friends and the invisible scars of war. He was a warrior, yes, but also a man haunted by memories no one in the quiet office could fathom. As the years passed, the adrenaline faded, and the battlefield was replaced by office corridors. Marcus found himself a stranger in civilian life, his identity reduced to the janitor's uniform. Yet, the strength and discipline of those years remained etched in his bones. Now, with eyes open and steady, Marcus understood that his story was no longer hidden. It was time to let it be heard. Leaving the military wasn't the peaceful ending Marcus had hoped for. After years of intense combat, camaraderie, and purpose, civilian life felt like stepping into a vast, silent void. The skills that once made him invaluable on the battlefield seemed irrelevant here, and the structure he had relied on was gone. The first few months were the hardest. Jobs came and went, but none fit the man he had become. His military discipline clashed with office routines and social norms. Conversations about weekend plans and casual gossip felt hollow compared to the life-and-death stakes he'd faced overseas. Marcus tried to keep his past behind him, hiding his tattoos under long sleeves and avoiding questions. It was easier to be the quiet janitor than to explain the complexity of his experiences or face the pity he feared from strangers. The uniform he now wore was faded and humble, but it provided a shield, a way to blend in and avoid unwanted attention. Inside, however, Marcus grappled with isolation and a gnawing emptiness. The brotherhood he'd lost, the adrenaline that fueled his days, and the sense of mission were absent. Nights were often restless, haunted by memories and shadows that never quite lifted. Yet, amidst the struggle, Marcus found a small measure of peace in routine and solitude. The janitor's work, though far from heroic, offered him a sense of control and purpose. Each night, as he moved through the empty corridors, he reconnected with discipline and calm. The transition was far from easy, but Marcus held on to the hope that, one day, the world would see beyond the uniform he wore now and recognize the man he still was. Despite the quiet exterior and the humble janitor's uniform, Marcus carried a reservoir of strength few could comprehend. His years in the Special Forces had ingrained in him a discipline that went beyond physical endurance. It was mental and emotional resilience forged in fire. At work, when the unexpected happened, a power outage, a minor fire alarm, or a medical emergency, Marcus reacted swiftly and calmly. His actions were efficient, precise, and carried the weight of experience. But instead of praise, his responses were often met with surprise or skepticism, as if his capabilities were too extraordinary to be believed. This quiet strength extended beyond emergencies. In everyday interactions, Marcus exuded a calm confidence, never rushing, never losing control. His steady presence became a silent anchor in the chaotic world of office deadlines and shifting priorities. But strength had its price. Marcus battled the ghosts of his past, flashbacks that came unbidden, nightmares that stirred his soul in the dead of night. He bore the invisible wounds of war, including PTSD, in silence. He refused to let these struggles define him or affect his work. In this way, Marcus was a man divided, a warrior still standing guard, even as he wore the janitor's uniform. His strength was quiet, often overlooked but unwavering. It was a testament to the battles he had survived and the life he was determined to build beyond them. And as the office slowly began to notice, that quiet strength would become impossible to ignore. At Meridian Towers, Marcus's skills often went unnoticed, buried beneath the janitor's mop and bucket. Yet, anyone paying attention would have seen that his military training lent him a unique edge, a keen eye for detail, strategic thinking, and an unflappable calm in pressure-filled situations. When a small leak developed in the ceiling near the IT department, Marcus was the first to spot it. While others debated who should report it, he quietly found the source, a loose pipe connection, and shut off the water valve before the situation worsened. The damage was minimal, and the incident went largely unrecognized by most staff. Similarly, when a security alarm was triggered during an overnight maintenance check, Marcus's trained instincts kicked in. Instead of panicking, he moved cautiously to investigate, identifying a false alarm caused by a malfunctioning sensor. His composed response prevented unnecessary panic and security disruptions. These moments revealed glimpses of Marcus's depth. Beneath the janitor's uniform was a problem solver, a man trained to assess risks and act decisively. His ability to stay calm and think clearly under pressure was invaluable, yet few took notice beyond the maintenance team. Even so, Marcus did not seek praise. His humility was part of his nature, a soldier trained to serve without expectation. The office environment, with its hierarchy and politics, was foreign territory. Here, success was measured by visibility and status, not quiet competence. But the underestimation of Marcus's abilities was about to change. The day would come when those skills, once undervalued, would be the very thing that saved the day and transformed how the office saw him. It was a late Wednesday night when the unexpected happened, an event that would reveal Marcus's true nature to the entire office. A sudden power surge triggered the building's alarm system, plunging Meridian Towers into darkness and confusion. Panic rippled through the empty halls as emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows. Most would have been disoriented, but Marcus moved with the calm precision of someone trained to face chaos. His first instinct was to locate the source of the surge and ensure everyone's safety. As he navigated the pitch-black corridors, his military experience guided every step, clear, purposeful, and confident. Reaching the electrical room, Marcus found sparks flying from a damaged circuit breaker. Flames had just begun to lick the edges of the panel. Without hesitation, he grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and doused the flames, preventing what could have been a disastrous fire. Simultaneously, he contacted building security using the radio system, coordinating a swift response and evacuation plan. His voice was steady and authoritative, cutting through the noise of alarms and static. As the emergency crews arrived, they found Marcus directing them to the source, guiding firefighters away from hazards and assisting with building evacuation. His knowledge of the building layout, combined with his calm leadership, minimized potential damage and ensured no one was harmed. The next morning, whispers circulated about the janitor who had quietly saved the building from disaster. For many, this was the moment when Marcus ceased to be invisible. His actions spoke louder than words, commanding respect and recognition. But Marcus cared little for accolades. For him, it was simply another mission accomplished with the same quiet dedication that had defined his life. The aftermath of the power surge incident rippled through Meridian Towers, transforming whispers into conversations and skepticism into genuine respect. Marcus, who had long been invisible, was now the man who had prevented disaster. But even as praise began to trickle in, Marcus remained humble, his focus never on recognition, but on duty. Employees who once ignored him now greeted him with nods and tentative smiles. The security team, impressed by his calm command during the crisis, sought him out to learn more about his background. Yet Marcus said little, content to let his actions speak. One afternoon, when the elevator system malfunctioned and trapped several employees between floors, Marcus was again there in the wings. While technicians scrambled, panic set in among the trapped workers. Marcus's steady voice over the emergency intercom calmed fears, assuring them help was coming. Once the elevator was fixed, a grateful employee approached Marcus. "I didn't know you were military," she said softly. Marcus nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "It's a part of who I am." Word spread that Marcus had served in the Special Forces, a fact that intrigued and inspired many. His stories, once locked away, began to surface in quiet conversations. The janitor was no longer just a janitor. He was a man of valor and experience. Yet, Marcus remained grounded. He knew that true service wasn't about accolades, but about doing what was right when it mattered most. His quiet heroism was a beacon to those who had overlooked him for so long. As respect grew, so did the office's understanding that sometimes the greatest strength lies hidden in the most unlikely places. Following the elevator incident and the fire scare, the atmosphere at Meridian Towers began to change in subtle but meaningful ways. The staff, once dismissive or indifferent, started treating Marcus with a newfound respect that he had long been denied. It was no longer about the uniform he wore, but the man he was beneath it. Conversation stopped when he entered rooms, replaced by nods of acknowledgement or brief smiles. Colleagues who had avoided eye contact now sought his opinion on minor issues, seemingly small gestures, but monumental for Marcus. Sarah, the intern who had first noticed the tattoo, felt a quiet pride watching the shift. She had seen the strength in Marcus before anyone else did, and now others were catching on. She began to include him in small group chats and invited him to join casual lunches, gestures that bridged the gap between worlds. Marcus accepted the changes with quiet humility. He didn't seek approval or praise, but the acceptance meant something deeper, a recognition of his worth and humanity beyond his job title. More than respect, it was validation, a reminder that his sacrifices and struggles were not invisible, that despite years of silence and isolation, he still belonged. And as the office culture softened around him, Marcus felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. Hope that his story could inspire others to see beyond surface impressions, and that sometimes heroes walk unnoticed in plain sight. With the walls of silence beginning to crumble, Marcus found himself slowly pulled into the fabric of office life in ways he hadn't expected. It started with small conversations, brief exchanges in the hallway, shared smiles at the coffee machine, and cautious questions about his past. Sarah became a steady companion in this new chapter. She listened intently as Marcus, bit by bit, began to share the stories that had long been locked away. His voice was steady but quiet, revealing tales of brotherhood, sacrifice, and the toll of war. Each story was a bridge, connecting his world to theirs. Colleagues who once mocked or ignored him started seeing Marcus as more than just a janitor. They saw the man who had faced unimaginable challenges, the soldier who had given years of his life in service, and the human being with hopes, fears, and resilience. One by one, barriers fell. Lunch invitations became regular, birthday cards appeared on his desk, and he was included in team events. The office culture shifted from casual dismissal to genuine camaraderie. For Marcus, these moments were both healing and humbling. They reminded him that despite the scars and silence, connection was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, and that sometimes it took the quietest voices to build the strongest bridges. As the days passed, Marcus no longer felt invisible. He was part of something bigger, a community that had finally begun to see him whole. One evening, after the office had emptied and the fluorescent lights dimmed, Marcus and Sarah sat in a quiet corner of the break room. For the first time, Marcus let down the barriers he'd carefully maintained for years. The janitor who had been silent now spoke, his voice calm but heavy with memories. He recounted a mission deep in hostile territory where his unit was ambushed. The air had been thick with smoke and gunfire, chaos all around. Marcus had found himself protecting a fellow soldier, shielding him from harm despite his own injuries. The operation was successful, but the cost was high. Friends lost, lives forever changed. Sarah listened with wide eyes, the gravity of his words settling in. This was no distant history. It was the foundation of Marcus's life, the reason behind his quiet demeanor and unyielding strength. He spoke of the brotherhood forged in battle, the burden of survival, and the loneliness of returning home. Sharing this story was a turning point. Marcus's silence had been a shield, but opening up began to dissolve the isolation. He allowed Sarah to glimpse the man behind the uniform, the warrior, the survivor, the quiet hero. For Sarah, it was a privilege and a lesson to look beyond appearances, to listen deeply, and to honor the stories hidden in plain sight. From that night forward, their bond grew stronger, built on trust and respect, setting the stage for Marcus's journey toward healing and acceptance. Marcus's stories were more than tales of valor. They were a window into the sacrifices that came with serving in the Special Forces. As he opened up to Sarah, the shadows of his past became clearer. The invisible wounds carried long after the battlefields were left behind. He spoke of the nights haunted by memories, the sudden flashbacks triggered by everyday sounds, and the weight of loss that never lifted. PTSD was a silent companion, shaping his moods and moments of solitude. He described the difficulty of asking for help, the stigma attached to vulnerability in a world that prized strength. The transition to civilian life was a constant struggle against these internal battles. While others moved forward, Marcus felt trapped between two worlds, the soldier he had been and the man he was trying to become. He longed for connection, but feared rejection. Despite the pain, Marcus never wanted to be defined by his struggles. He sought dignity and respect, not pity. His quiet strength was a testament to endurance, resilience, and the hope that healing was possible. Sarah's support became a lifeline. She encouraged him to explore resources for veterans, reminding him that seeking help was a sign of courage. Together, they began the slow process of breaking down the barriers of silence. Marcus's story revealed the true cost of service, a price often paid in silence, but never forgotten. With Sarah's encouragement, Marcus took the tentative first steps towards seeking help beyond the office walls. He contacted a local veterans support group, a place where stories like his were understood and accepted without judgment. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone in his struggles. The group meetings were humbling yet healing. Fellow veterans sharing their experiences, their challenges, and their victories over the invisible wounds of war. Marcus found comfort in their camaraderie, the shared understanding that came from knowing someone else had walked a similar path. Sarah accompanied him to his first few sessions, her presence a steady reminder that he was not forgotten. Marcus learned to navigate conversations about PTSD, reintegration, and the complexities of civilian life. Each meeting chipped away at the isolation that had defined so much of his post-military existence. At work, Marcus's demeanor began to subtly shift. The quiet janitor still moved with deliberate calm, but there was a new lightness in his step, a glimmer of hope. His bond with Sarah deepened, rooted in trust and shared purpose. The veterans group also connected Marcus with counseling services and resources to address his physical injuries and emotional needs. Slowly, he began to reclaim parts of himself that had been buried under years of silence. Support had arrived, not as charity, but as recognition of Marcus's courage and humanity. It was a turning point, a sign that healing, though not easy, was possible. Word of Marcus's journey and quiet strength began to ripple through Meridian Towers, sparking a subtle but profound transformation in the office culture. The building that once echoed with dismissive whispers now hummed with newfound respect and empathy. Colleagues started to engage in conversations about veterans' experiences and the challenges of reintegration. Lunchroom discussions shifted from superficial gossip to thoughtful dialogues about resilience, sacrifice, and mental health awareness. Sarah took an active role in organizing talks and informational sessions, inviting experts to educate the staff. Marcus, once a shadow in the background, was now an unwitting catalyst for change. His story inspired others to look beyond appearances and preconceived notions. The office began fostering a culture that valued every individual's unique journey, breaking down barriers that had long divided employees. Managers implemented policies supporting mental health and veteran-friendly resources, recognizing the importance of a supportive environment. Team-building events included discussions on inclusivity and respect, bridging gaps across departments. Marcus himself felt the difference. The once isolating environment was becoming a place where he could contribute not just as a janitor, but as a valued member of the community. The walls that had confined him were giving way to openness and understanding. The office transformation was not just about Marcus. It was about recognizing humanity in all its forms, a lesson that resonated far beyond the polished floors of Meridian Towers. With the office transformed and his own healing underway, Marcus found himself drawn to a new sense of purpose. The journey from invisible janitor to respected colleague had awakened something deep within, a desire to give back and support others facing similar struggles. He began mentoring younger veterans who worked or interned at Meridian Towers, offering guidance rooted in his own experiences. Whether helping them navigate workplace challenges or simply providing a listening ear, Marcus became a quiet pillar of strength. Sarah remained by his side, encouraging his efforts and helping to connect him with community organizations. Together, they organized informal support groups and workshops focused on resilience, mental health, and career development. Marcus also volunteered at a local veterans center, sharing his story to inspire those still grappling with transition and trauma. His presence was a living testament to survival, dignity, and the power of hope. In the office, his new role fostered greater unity. Colleagues who had once underestimated him now looked to Marcus as a leader in compassion and strength. His humility and dedication earned him deep respect across departments. Through this purpose, Marcus reclaimed not only his identity, but his voice. The quiet janitor had become a beacon, a man who turned personal struggle into collective strength, proving that true heroism often begins in silence. The annual company meeting was typically a routine affair: presentations, sales reports, and obligatory applause. But this year, something different was in the air. As employees gathered in the sleek conference hall, an unusual announcement promised to break the monotony. When the CEO stepped onto the stage, he paused, scanning the room before speaking. Today, we honor an individual whose dedication, courage, and quiet heroism have not only saved this company, but have inspired us all. A hush fell as Marcus was called forward. Surprised but composed, he stood and approached the podium. The room erupted in applause, colleagues from every department rising to their feet, their faces reflecting admiration and gratitude. The CEO detailed Marcus's heroic actions during the emergency incidents, his resilience in the face of personal struggles, and his transformative impact on the office culture. The award wasn't just for a job well done, but for embodying the values of integrity, strength, and service. Marcus accepted the recognition with humility, reminding everyone that true courage often goes unseen. His speech was brief but powerful, a testament to the silent battles many fight daily. That day marked a turning point. The janitor who had once been overlooked was now a celebrated figure, proof that heroism takes many forms and that respect earned through deeds transcends titles and uniforms. As the applause echoed, Marcus knew his journey was far from over, but this moment was a victory worth cherishing. The recognition at work had reignited something Marcus hadn't felt in years, a longing for connection beyond the office walls. Encouraged by Sarah and his growing support network, he decided to reach out to estranged family members, uncertain but hopeful. His first call was to his younger brother, David, from whom he'd been distant since leaving the military. The conversation was tentative, filled with awkward pauses and cautious words. But beneath the surface, old bonds stirred, and the possibility of reconciliation took root. Over the next weeks, phone calls turned into visits.